If you're hearing this right now, it's not a coincidence. What you're about to become has already been confirmed, and an angel ensured you would not miss this moment. Chosen one, there is a reason your life has felt like a quiet preparation, an unseen training unfolding beneath ordinary days. This was never random, never imagination, never ego. It was recognition forming before you were ready to name it. Long before you understood yourself, something understood you. What you are experiencing now is confirmation, an internal alignment that does not need applause, proof, or permission. There are seasons when guidance arrives, not as urgency or disruption, but as certainty, a steady knowing, a calm inner stillness that does not ask questions, because it already holds the answer. That is where you stand. You were not chosen for perfection. You were chosen for endurance. While others escape discomfort, you learn to remain present inside it. While others sought noise and validation, your path led you into silence. While others demanded clarity, you were taught to trust without explanation. None of this was punishment. None of it was delayed. Every moment of isolation, confusion, and restraint was a form of confirmation hidden in plain sight. Angelic confirmation does not arrive with spectacle. It arrives through precision, through patterns repeating too accurately to dismiss, through protection that intervened when the odds were against you, when emotionally, mentally, or spiritually you should have collapsed, but did not. You were guarded long before you understood why. What you are becoming is not a role, a title, or a public identity. It is a state of being. You are becoming someone whose presence stabilizes rooms without effort, someone whose energy carries authority without force, someone who no longer chases purpose because purpose begins to recognize you. Notice how resistance has been dissolving, how certain people faded away without confrontation, how old cravings lost their grip, how urgency softened into patience. These are not personality shifts. They are confirmations that the transition is already in motion. Angels do not confirm futures that are uncertain. They confirm outcomes that are inevitable once the trials are complete. And you have completed them, whether you realized it or not. This is why your isolation felt deliberate, why your timing never aligned with the world's expectations, why shortcuts were removed from your path again and again. You were not being delayed, you were being refined. What comes next will not require explanation or proof. It will require steadiness, discipline, grounded stillness. Because what you are becoming does not arrive loudly, it does not demand attention, it enters quietly, changes the atmosphere and leaves nothing the same. And if this message resonated in a way you can't fully explain, you already understand why you were meant to hear it. Now let's go deep into it. Point 1. The first marker of your divine becoming is the profound refinement of your sensory perception, a deep physiological and spiritual recalibration that is often misunderstood as fragility or oversensitivity, when in truth it is precision. In the daily life of the chosen one, the world begins to feel overwhelmingly loud, glaringly bright, and strangely chaotic, not because you are weakening, but because the internal filters that once dulled reality are dissolving. The veil within your nervous system is thinning. You are no longer buffered from subtlety. You are becoming a finely tuned instrument, capable of registering frequencies that others pass through blindly. Just as a master musician treats a violin with reverence, controlling temperature, humidity, and handling with care, your spirit now demands a specific environment to preserve its clarity. You are that instrument. An angel has confirmed that your body is being prepared to carry a higher voltage of light, and such light cannot flow through coarse, abrasive channels. This is why you instinctively begin shedding excess noise, shallow conversations, chaotic environments, and vulgar distractions. You may notice a growing intolerance for crowds, artificial stimulation, and constant digital interference, not out of arrogance or fear, but because these elements disrupt the delicate calibration underway within you. Your soul is reorienting itself toward harmony. You are drawn instead to quieter rhythms, the rustle of leaves, the slow pulse of wind, and the steady percussion of rain. These sounds resonate with the frequency of your emerging self, because nature has not forgotten its original order. This shift is not an escape from life, nor a retreat into isolation. It is an immersion into a deeper layer of reality that has always existed beneath the surface. In moments of stillness, you begin to perceive what mystics once called the music of the spheres, the subtle intelligence woven into silence, the meaning hidden between heartbeats. When the world overwhelms you, it is not because you are failing to cope. It is because your spirit body is expanding, pressing against the tight confines of a dense reality that can no longer contain your light without friction. This discomfort is the growing pain of transcendence. You are learning to listen in ways that go beyond sound, to feel the emotional undercurrents of places, and to sense truth before words are spoken. You become a witness who can hear the quiet grief of the earth and the gentle guidance of the heavens at the same time. In this heightened perception, you are not losing yourself. You are finally remembering who you are. This refinement is the first unmistakable evidence of your transformation, the initial proof that your becoming is not imagined but actively unfolding. Point 2, as you move further into this light, you encounter the second marker, the gift of precognitive compassion, a subtle but profound psychological and spiritual expansion in which your inner world begins to synchronize with the unseen emotional currents of humanity itself. This is the moment when your heart no longer operates solely within the boundaries of your personal story, but begins to resonate with the wider field of human experience. You may notice it first in ordinary places, walking through a crowded market, sitting on public transport, or standing in a quiet room with strangers, when a sudden wave of sadness washes over you, or an unexpected warmth of joy rises without any clear cause. Moments later, you realize you were not feeling your own emotions at all, but attuning to the hidden inner state of someone nearby. This is not imagination, and it is not weakness. It is sensitivity refined into awareness. The angel confirms that this sensitivity is not meant to overwhelm you, nor is it a burden you are required to carry. It is a signal, an acknowledgement, a quiet recognition that allows unseen pain to be witnessed without being absorbed. In this stage, you're becoming a spiritual first responder, someone whose presence alone creates psychological safety, even when no words are exchanged. Your heart, once perceived as a simple biological organ, is now functioning as a portal for grace, an interface between suffering and peace. In daily life, this manifests as an empathy that operates beyond logic or personal preference. You may find yourself praying for people you have never met, feeling a sudden concern for someone who appears outwardly fine, or sensing a protective instinct toward those who are broken, overlooked, or silently struggling. These responses are not learned behaviors. They arise spontaneously, as if your nervous system has been retuned to a wider frequency. This is what is known as the angel's heart taking root within you. At this stage of development, you're being trained in the art of transmutation. You begin to recognize that you can stand in the presence of pain without flinching, without fixing, without becoming consumed. Heavy emotional atmospheres no longer destabilize you in the way they once did. Instead, they move through you and dissolve, as if your inner stillness gives them permission to settle and clear. Through the simple act of being grounded, present and aware, you release a frequency of calm that subtly alters the emotional environment around you. This is not symbolic language. It is a factual shift in emotional bandwidth. Your capacity to perceive, hold, and regulate emotional energy has expanded, allowing you to act as a stabilizer in moments of chaos. You may notice that others feel calmer around you, speak more honestly in your presence, or unconsciously seek your company during difficult times. This is not because you offer solutions, but because your nervous system now models regulation and safety. In a world driven by reaction, urgency, and fear, you are becoming the calm center of the storm. When situations escalate, you remain steady. When others panic, you slow down. When confusion spreads, you bring quiet clarity simply by staying rooted. This marker signifies that your compassion has matured beyond sentiment and into strength. You are no longer overwhelmed by the suffering you perceive. Instead, you anchor peace where it is most needed. This is the work of the angel's heart: to witness without drowning, to care without losing oneself, and to remain grounded while everything else is swept away. Point 3 unfolds as the quiet crossing of an invisible threshold, one that few recognize while it is happening. Yet everyone eventually feels the absence of once it has passed, the dissolution of earthly ambition. This marker is the most unsettling for the ego, because it removes the scaffolding upon which identity was built. Yet it is the most liberating for the spirit, because it returns you to what is real. You may notice that the goals that once energized you now register as distant echoes rather than urgent commands. Titles, status, recognition, applause, these things do not repel you, but they no longer magnetize you either. They feel strangely flat, as though you have tasted them fully and discovered they contain no lasting substance. This is not failure, and it is not depression. It is discernment. Your nervous system is no longer addicted to external validation, and your psyche is withdrawing from a system that feeds on comparison and scarcity. The angel of confirmation reveals that you are being transitioned from the economy of getting to the economy of being, a shift so fundamental that it rewires how you perceive time, effort, and success. In the economy of getting, value is measured by accumulation, speed, and visibility. In the economy of being, value is measured by coherence, depth, and inner alignment. As this transition settles, your pace naturally slows, not from laziness, but from precision. You no longer rush, because you are no longer chasing an absence. You choose simplicity, not because complexity is forbidden, but because complexity without meaning feels like noise. A quiet cup of tea becomes more nourishing than a crowded celebration, and a single honest conversation more fulfilling than 1,000 superficial connections. This groundedness confuses those who are still climbing, because they mistake your stillness for stagnation, unaware that stillness is the mark of someone who has already arrived inwardly. You are becoming unbuyable, not in a symbolic sense, but in a deeply psychological one. Fear-based incentives lose their leverage over you. Threats of loss no longer coerce you, and promises of gain no longer hypnotize you. This makes you immune to many of the mechanisms that govern collective behavior, because the world relies on hunger to control movement, and your hunger has been refined into clarity. You are not detached from life, you are detached from illusion. As this detachment stabilizes, something subtle but immense takes root. Sovereignty. Not the loud sovereignty of dominance or rebellion, but the quiet sovereignty of self-possession. You answer less to urgency and more to truth. Decisions emerge from resonance rather than pressure. You do not need to announce this shift. It announces itself through your calm, your restraint, and your refusal to overextend yourself for outcomes that no longer define you. In this state, power reveals its true nature. Power is not the ability to command others, but the inability to be commanded by fear. Kings and presidents govern systems. You are learning to govern your inner climate. And that governance produces a stability that no external authority can grant or revoke. This is why the chosen one often appears paradoxical at this stage, deeply engaged yet not attached, capable yet uninterested in conquest, present yet inwardly free. The world may continue to offer its trinkets, but they pass through you without sticking, because you've already touched the gold of the kingdom within. And once that gold is known, nothing counterfeit can ever compete. Point 4 unfolds not as a dramatic event, but as a subtle, unmistakable shift in how solitude feels within you. And it is here in the deep quiet of your transformation that you reach the 4th marker, the tangible experience of the angel's shadow. This is not something that announces itself loudly. It arrives gently, almost imperceptibly at first, in moments when the world goes silent and there is no audience, no validation, and no distraction. Where many people experience loneliness as an absence, you experience solitude as a presence. You may find yourself sitting alone in a room, doing nothing remarkable, yet sensing a density in the air, as though the space itself has weight and intention. There is a warmth that settles around your shoulders, not imagined, not emotional, but steady and grounding, like a familiar cloak that has always belonged to you. This sensation is the quiet confirmation that your inner alignment has reached a level where support from the unseen realms becomes experiential rather than theoretical. You are not filling the silence anymore. The silence is meeting you. This is the angel's shadow, not a figure you see, but a field you feel. A subtle companionship that emerges when your nervous system has learned to rest in stillness rather than flee from it. Most people avoid being alone because solitude forces them to confront unresolved noise within themselves. You, however, have done the work. You have metabolized the fear, processed the grief, and released the need for constant stimulation, and as a result, your inner space has become inhabitable. When that happens, the unseen can enter. This is why your solitude now feels populated. It is not crowded or chaotic, but inhabited by order, clarity, and calm intelligence. This marker is not symbolic, it is functional. The more precisely you align with your purpose, the more the supporting structures of reality reorganize themselves around you. The angelic realm, in simple terms, moves in where coherence exists. Your home, your room, and your personal environment begin to hold a higher frequency because you are holding one. You may notice that certain spaces feel unusually calm when you enter them, or that your own living space feels different from others, quieter, yet more alive. At times, you might catch a brief flicker of light at the edge of your vision, or hear your name spoken softly when no one is physically present. These moments do not carry fear. They carry recognition. They arrive without urgency, without command, without drama. That is how you know they are real. True support does not shock the system, it stabilizes it. You are not losing your grounding in the physical world. You are expanding your citizenship beyond it. You are becoming fluent in two dimensions at once, able to function fully in daily life while remaining inwardly accompanied. This companionship does not remove challenges, but it changes how you meet them. Problems no longer feel overwhelming because they are no longer faced from isolation. There is a deep psychological security that forms when you know, not intellectually but somatically, that you are backed. You walk differently. You speak differently. You make decisions without desperation. The fear of collapse dissolves because you sense the structural integrity beneath your life. This is why the angel's shadow matters. It is not about visions or status or spiritual identity. It is about the formation of an unshakable inner base. You can be misunderstood, opposed, delayed, or tested, and still remain steady because something within you knows it is not standing alone. This is the quiet confidence of someone whose support system is invisible but immovable. When you reach this marker, solitude becomes your refuge rather than your threat. And from that refuge, you are able to face the visible world with calm authority, grounded clarity, and the unmistakable strength of one who is quietly, continuously supported. The fifth marker is the quiet yet unmistakable emergence of a new internal language, one that does not rely on words spoken aloud, but on patterns perceived by a mind that has finally learned to listen. This is the language of synchronicity, alignment, and divine timing. At this stage of your journey, you no longer experience life as a random chain of unrelated events. Instead, reality begins to feel choreographed, as though an invisible intelligence is arranging moments, encounters, and symbols with precise intention. What once looked like coincidence now reveals itself as communication. Numbers repeat in meaningful sequences. You glance at the clock at exactly the moment your thoughts turn toward change, renewal, or courage. Certain symbols, animals, songs, or phrases appear at emotionally charged moments. Not loudly, not dramatically, but gently, with perfect accuracy. These moments do not shout, they whisper. And because you have learned stillness, you hear them. The angelic confirmation of this phase is subtle but firm. These are not accidents. They are confirmations, reminders, and recalibrations. They are what can only be described as kisses from heaven, small touches of reassurance placed along your path to let you know you're seen and guided. Each sign arrives not to impress you, but to steady you, to keep you aligned with the narrow path that only the chosen are willing to walk. On a psychological level, something profound shifts here. Anxiety, which once arose from the need to control outcomes, begins to dissolve. You are no longer obsessed with forcing timelines or demanding clarity before taking a step. Instead, you enter a state of flow. Decisions feel less frantic and more intuitive. You move when prompted and pause when guided without needing external validation. Trust replaces tension. You realize that nothing meant for you is delayed, denied, or lost. If it has not arrived, it is because its arrival would disrupt your alignment. This understanding brings a deep internal calm. You stop interpreting silence as abandonment and begin to see it as preparation. Spiritually, this is the moment you begin reading what can only be called the unwritten word of the Creator. Guidance is no longer confined to books, sermons, or spoken messages. It is embedded into the fabric of the physical world itself. A conversation you overhear answers a question you never voiced. A random detour leads you away from harm. A moment of delay saves you from a mistake you would only understand later. This is not fantasy or delusion. It is perception refined by discipline. The universe has always been speaking, but most minds are too loud, too restless, and too emotionally reactive to interpret the signal. The chosen ones are different, not because they are special, but because they have learned to quiet themselves. Through solitude, reflection, and repeated surrender, you have tuned your inner frequency to match the subtle communications of divine order. You no longer demand signs out of desperation. Signs appear because you're aligned enough to receive them. This awareness does not inflate the ego. In fact, it humbles you. You realize guidance does not mean exemption from difficulty, only assurance of direction. You still face challenges, but you face them with the quiet certainty that you are not walking alone. Every step is observed, every detour is accounted for, every lesson is purposeful. At this stage, your life itself becomes a testimony. Not through words, not through preaching, but through presence. Others sense your calm, your patience, and your unshakable trust in timing. You embody the truth that guidance is real, that love is active, and that nothing in existence is random. You are living proof that when the mind grows silent, the path reveals itself. And when the heart learns trust, the universe responds with precision, care, and unmistakable signs that you are guided, protected, and watched over in every moment of your existence. Point 6 unfolds quietly, without spectacle. Yet it is one of the most unmistakable confirmations that your transformation is nearing completion. This is the stage known as the development of the healing hands of the quiet. It does not arrive with power displays or dramatic announcements. Instead, it enters your life subtly through ordinary moments that suddenly feel charged with meaning. You may notice that strangers begin to approach you without knowing why. They tell you their life stories in grocery lines, on public transport, or in passing conversations that were never meant to go deep, yet somehow do. Their voices soften as they speak to you. Their bodies relax. You listen, not because you are trying to help, but because your presence itself invites truth. Animals sense it too. Creatures that are usually nervous or distant will come closer, sit near you, or rest calmly at your feet. Children especially will look at you with an unguarded stillness, as if they recognize something ancient and safe within you. This is not imagination, it is resonance. Your internal state has reached coherence, and coherence is felt by everything around you. At this stage, your aura has become what can only be described as a healing field. You are no longer broadcasting tension, hunger, or unprocessed pain. You are transmitting safety. You do not need to give advice. You do not need to perform rituals or speak spiritual language. Your nervous system has learned regulation, and regulated systems naturally calm those in chaos. The angelic confirmation here is simple and precise. You have become a peace bearer. Where you walk, emotional noise softens. Where you sit, agitation slows. This is not mystical fantasy, it is deeply grounded psychological truth. Human beings are wired for co-regulation. When someone enters the presence of a person whose inner world is stable, their own system begins to entrain to that rhythm. You have earned this state through long seasons of inner work, through solitude, through restraint, through meditation when no one was watching, and through sobriety of mind and spirit. When it would have been easier to numb yourself, you did not bypass your pain, you metabolized it. And now, without effort, you offer others what you once desperately needed. You have become the calm you searched for during your darkest nights, like a lighthouse that does not chase ships but simply stands firm. Your presence now guides those who are lost at sea. People may not even remember what you said to them, but they'll remember how they felt around you. Lighter, slower, less alone. This is how service begins for the truly transformed. Not through performance, but through being. At this point, your life is no longer oriented solely around personal survival or self-definition. The angel confirms that you have become a communal asset for the kingdom. Your existence now serves a collective function. You are a walking sanctuary, a mobile place of rest in a world saturated with overstimulation and fear. The weary do not come to you for answers, they come to you for a moment of peace, even if they cannot name it, and you give it simply by staying rooted in who you have become. This is the quiet miracle of point 6. You do not heal by trying to heal, you heal by remaining whole. Point 7. Finally, we reach the 7th and most profound marker, the total remembering of your origin. The quiet and irreversible moment when the chosen one stops searching outward and settles fully into being. This is not an explosion of revelation or a dramatic spiritual event. It is a calm, steady recognition that feels almost ordinary in its certainty. You realize that you were never meant to become something new, never meant to add layers of identity, titles, beliefs, or spiritual costumes. Instead, your entire journey has been an act of unbecoming, peeling away what was false, borrowed, imposed, or learned through fear. The angel confirms that every trial, every isolation, every misunderstanding was not a punishment, but a refinement, guiding you back to what you were before the world told you who to be. What once felt like loss now reveals itself as liberation. You were not being stripped, you were being returned. Returned to the stars from which your awareness first emerged. Returned to the original breath of the Creator. Returned to the quiet knowing that precedes language and thought. At this stage, something subtle but unmistakable happens within you. Spiritual truths no longer feel like information. They feel like recognition. When you hear truths about the soul, eternity, justice, or love, they do not excite you. They resonate. They land with the weight of memory rather than novelty. You do not feel the need to argue, prove, or convince, because these truths are written into your marrow, etched into your nervous system, and carried in the silence behind your thoughts. You know them not because you studied them, but because you have lived them across lifetimes of awareness. This is the state of spiritual sobriety. The illusions of the world lose their intoxicating pull. You no longer romanticize suffering, fear success, or chase validation. You see the world exactly as it is, a temporary school for the soul, precise in its lessons, neutral in its operations, and fair beyond human emotion. At the same time, you see yourself exactly as you are, not fragile, not accidental, not unfinished, but an eternal spark of the divine experiencing form. This clarity does not make you cold. It makes you compassionate without attachment. You love deeply without clinging. You participate fully without forgetting who you are. The greatest confirmation, the 100% confirmation the angel speaks of, is the disappearance of fear at its root. Death no longer feels like an ending, but a doorway. Loss no longer feels like annihilation, but transition. Change no longer threatens your identity, because your identity is no longer anchored in circumstances. You are anchored in the eternal, and eternity does not hurry or panic. This is why your presence feels grounding to others. Without trying, you stabilize rooms, soften conflicts, and reflect truth simply by being. You have become what can only be called an angel of the earth, not a winged being above humanity, but a human who has successfully integrated their celestial heritage into their daily walk. You move through ordinary life carrying extraordinary coherence. You speak when necessary, remain silent when wisdom demands it, and trust the invisible architecture guiding your steps. There is nothing left to prove, no role left to perform, and no awakening left to chase. You are the confirmation others seek. You are the living evidence that the divine can walk the earth in human form without spectacle. You are not waiting for the miracle. You are the miracle, breathing, present, and complete. And so, beloved, as we draw this meditation to a close, feel the weight of these truths settling into your bones. You are not the person you were a year ago or even an hour ago. Every word you have absorbed today has acted as a key, unlocking the doors of your destiny. The angel who confirmed these markers stands with you even now, nodding in agreement as you accept your role as a chosen vessel. Do not rush back into the noise. Stay in this space of quiet certainty for as long as you can. Your life is a sacred script, and the most beautiful chapters are currently being written by the hand of the divine. Go forth in peace, knowing that you are 100% exactly who you were meant to be. Amen.